Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth, along with
Louis Adio Weiss, Mr. Stat.
Yeah, Mr. Stat, and otherwise known as Sweet Lou, depending on who you talk to. And we have our first man on the line. He's the main man, David Levin. Well, David, you're not talking about football tonight. We're going into Lewis's territory called baseball, and we have a lot of developing situations with what's going on with the cheating. So let's talk about where we start. We begin with the Astros.
How are you guys doing, first of all? It's the first time I've been able to talk to you since the first of the year.
Yeah.
You guys.
It's been a whirlwind for me, buddy. I've 15,000 miles over a 6-week period covering the West Coast, the Midwest, you name it, East Coast. But here we are back at it again. We're giving ourselves a monster of a great year, that's for sure, David. So we're glad that you're part of the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network family. So we're doing great.
All right, let's talk a little baseball, guys.
Let's do it.
This is not how I expected us to start this, but we got a little cheating scandal going on here that seems to be blossoming like a volcano.
You think?
So, from what I understand, and I'm doing a lot more research these days because Scott is teaching me to be as thorough as possible. It started out with the Astros, and there's been talking about them cheating for 2 or 3 years now, stealing signs and baseball atrocities that you're not supposed to be doing. And it comes to light that they did, in fact, steal signs and cheat during the World Series, to the point where Major League Baseball did its due diligence, and I applaud Major League Baseball for really digging into the situation. Unlike other maybe sports arenas that maybe don't cover the whole picture, Major League Baseball does a really good job of making sure that they try to protect the purity of the game. So it was handed down that the Houston Astros did indeed cheat in the 2017 World Series. It is a tainted title. And for their troubles, they were fined millions of dollars. A.J. Hinch and the general manager, and I forgot his first name. Forgive me. That's his name.
Jeff Luhnow.
They were both suspended. Yes, suspended for a year, and then upon them being their suspension their tenure coming up, they've been fired. Mm-hmm. They both have been contractually fired after the end of the suspension. But there are more layers to it, as Scott has said. And like we were just talking about, it's not an 8-layer cake, it's an 80-layer cake. And no matter how much you peel back the onion, you're going to get another layer. So now from that, Alex Cora, who was the manager of the Boston Red Sox, was on the Houston Astros staff at the time, and he seems to be the ringleader that began this trend, if you want to call it. And he has been fired by the Boston Red Sox for his part in it. And today, because Carlos Beltran was part of the trifecta, if you want to call it, who had just taken the job with the New York Mets, he resigned today. So there are 3 different major powerhouse baseball teams have been affected by this. And in all reality, every single major league team is going to be affected by this, one way or the other.
All right. We know on the surface that there's going to be a lot of developing stories. So what I want to try to do is move this along a little bit further and talk about the fact that you have 3 managerial openings as we are in the middle.
2 now. Because Joe Espada is going to assume the roles for now, but they are interviewing candidates. So
okay, well,
3.
Whatever.
Right.
3 permanent openings is what we have. Obviously, interim, I don't care. I'm talking about big picture, okay? But you have 3. You got the Astros, the Red Sox, and the Mets. Where do we go with that? Who's going to be piloting? All right, we'll lead off with what you said.
So me and Scott were talking before the show, and some of the candidates that emerged for the Mets job are, I believe, Luis Rojas, who is a coach on that staff. I believe he's either their bench coach or he's one of the 2 hitting coaches. Now it seems like teams have 35 coaches. But I think Hensley Mullins, who is one of their bench coaches, who was part of those San Francisco Giants teams, who was a hitting coach on the Giants when they won those World Series in the earlier part of the 2010s, serves as the best candidate. He has experience coaching the Netherlands in the World Baseball Classic, and he's generally regarded as a very good players manager. I think he honestly is the one candidate who could be a stabilizing force in the wake of all this and be a nice distraction because he's a good culture guy, and I think that's what matters in a time like this. You kind of need your guys to gather around each other, and you don't need a distraction in the name of like some, no-name manager who really people don't know of and respect.
True, but you also have fires to put out, and there are enough capable veteran managers to settle the situation down as well. And you do have some good ones out there. You got Dusty Baker, a very stabilizing influence wherever he's gone. Buck Showalter, I think, is nobody's any better than him out there. He's been a winner wherever he's been.
I love Buck Showalter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wish he would be manager down in Miami.
And he knows how to handle New York.
True.
Right. And that's a big thing, too. Remember, we're talking about we have 3 openings for 3 major league teams, but these are big markets.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just if it was and I hate to do it this way, if it was someplace like Pittsburgh or maybe Cincinnati or a smaller market team, then the damage is great, but it's not as abstract as it being in the Big Apple or Houston, which is one of the powerhouse teams right now, or even in Boston where they're still thinking we can win World Series with what we have. It's a major effect, and it's a really big black eye. So you have to find. I agree with Scott. You're going to find an older manager, maybe Dusty Baker, Buck Showalter, somebody who has maybe I don't know, throw a name out there who has managerial experience who would come back and kind of right the ship.
Well, David, stabilizing influence, pal. That's what we're looking at. Stabilizing influence.
Yeah, right.
That's what experience generally tends to breed. Now we know that Bruce Bochy's not going to come back. If he was going to manage this year, he would have stayed with the Giants. Is what he would have done, but he didn't. Right. So you take his head out of the ring, and Buck Showalter interviewed for the Philadelphia Phillies job only to see Joe Girardi get the job. So Buck Showalter knows how to manage in a big market. And either big market, whether it's Houston or New York, would be very suitable for the guy. And, Boston, I don't see the fit there. What's that?
I said I could see Showalter in Houston like tomorrow. And
Me too.
To me, that makes so much sense.
Oh, yeah.
The guy that I have heard, and before I told you before we went on the air that I had done some research, the guy that keeps on popping up on some of the stuff that I've read, Eduardo Perez, is a name that's come up with the Mets. I don't know how much that sticks to it, but he's a likable guy. He's a stabilizer. He has experience, and he's well respected. And I think that, it's like you said, it's stabilizing the situation. Somebody who can actually get out in front of the media and say, okay, we're moving forward. We're going to let. Evidently, Major League Baseball is going to continue to investigate this, but we're going to spring training in a month, and we have things to do, and we have a team, and you got to find a guy who can balance both arenas. Is that the right word?
No, that's close. Yeah, but let me interject here. I don't see Eduardo Perez getting a sniff either. I don't. I mean, I believe in my mind you have got to go with an experienced guy. Now, could Boston get away with maybe bringing on Jason Varitek? Maybe, but Mark Littell shot that one down the other night.
He's also said in reports that he doesn't want to do it. So, I mean,
right? His name, I saw that his name jumped up immediately, but I also heard that he didn't want to be part of the scrum.
Oh yeah, I don't blame him.
It's a scrum. It's terrible.
So, go ahead, David.
No, go ahead. I was going to ask.
No. I'll let you say what you got to say. I just wanted to add on to a point that you mentioned about Eduardo Perez, but continue with what you were saying. I don't think you hire from within or somebody who had connections to the team before. I think you go ahead and you find somebody who has baseball ties, but has no connection to these 3 teams.
Well, I agree.
Because that kind of neutralizes what's going on. And I'd love to know what you guys think about that.
Definitively agree with you all the way. I don't have to say a lot. Okay, totally agree. Get somebody that has non-organizational ties and get somebody with a boatload of experience. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I've said this before, and I'll say it to you, and I'll say it to you again, okay? I personally think that a guy like Brian Butterfield, who's a New England guy, would be a good hire for the Red Sox. And Brian is a great baseball man.
Mm-hmm.
And I date back to him all the way back to the 80s when I worked with him for the Fort Lauderdale Yankees, and then we came in contact with each other a few years ago when he was with the Red Sox over in Fort Myers. So I think that Brian Butterfield would be a great guy to bring in, give him an opportunity to manage a year. Who knows, maybe he does well enough that he gets an extension and continues on, and maybe because he's got experience dealing with baseball on all levels. It's not like he's just a regular first-time manager without any experience or credibility at all. That would be the first call I would make with the Red Sox, is bring on Brian Butterfield. Not so much because of my ties with the Yankees, but Brian Butterfield is a great baseball man. Let me say it again, okay, guys? Great baseball man. Go on, Lewis.
He's won in Boston, so that counts. He was on that 2013 World Series team. But I'll get back to Eduardo Perez real quick when we're talking about this search for managers. I wouldn't want a guy like him to have his first managerial job be in an organization that's in the midst of this. The Mets are only involved as a result of Beltran's involvement with Houston in 2017. He was a player on that team, and he's denied any association with it. But what we have not discussed is in that 9-page report released by MLB, Beltran was the only player's name that was listed. Right. They had listed a player-devised scheme with players including Carlos Beltran. So that makes it sound like he has something more to do with it. As far as Eduardo Perez goes, though, as a manager, I think one day, I don't think it's going to be now, he will make a very good manager, because we have to figure this. Now we emphasize guys that can speak multiple languages. Tony La Russa, who's with the Angels, can speak 7 languages. That's something that works for a lot of players, especially you have guys coming from the Netherlands, the Dominican, America. Perez balances the analytics. He has enough of a knowledge of just a pure baseball knowledge, being that he played in the major leagues for 13 years. He knows the game beyond analytics. He also has a dad who is a Hall of Fame player, so he grew up around the game. He has a feel for it that we don't have. But again, he would be a viable candidate. He's a viable candidate in any of these, and you don't want to talk about organizational ties because he was at one point a coach for Houston. He's going to make a great manager. I just don't think right now is the time for him to do that.
First of all, guys, I know Eduardo Perez when I've covered some Marlins games, and we've had some pretty enlightening discussions. I know there's no doubt in my mind that he would make a great manager given the opportunity. But there's a difference between being a manager, okay, and then having to be a public relations guy / manager to clean up an absolute mess. I think the one thing that can't get lost sight in this whole situation is this, okay, at the New York Mets probably made a questionable hire in the first place, bringing on a guy with no experience with Carlos Beltran, and this is an easy way for them to get out of that potential mistake to bring in another guy. So this is an easier outlet for them to justify that they made a mistake. So as a result, they can resume their managerial hire, because who's to think that both sides didn't have any cold feet? Now this enables them to have a smooth landing spot to get somebody that knows what to do. You talked about this earlier. Now I want to bring this up to you, David, okay? I like Terry Collins returning to the Mets. He may have finished...
I wanted to bring that up to you. I'm so glad you did that.
No problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's from Midland, Michigan, by the way, and Terry Collins won over 500-some games, and to win 500-some games with the Mets is like winning 600 someplace else because of the dysfunction front office in the first place.
Right. It's so crazy. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Part of his issue was health issues, too, along the way at the end, right?
Yeah,
And that's why he walked away?
Mm-hmm. One of the many reasons, and then his relationship with Sandy Alderson kind of deteriorated, but we know Alderson also had his health problems.
He did have... I think he had a heart scare and he wandered from the hospital.
Correct.
Okay. If he is healthy, he comes back into New York and he becomes a favorite son, and it
absolutely
fits perfectly.
Oh yeah,
It's perfect.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think he would be an ideal. Let me liken this analogy, guys. Okay, or I believe. For me, driving 850 miles in California, okay, like I just did in the last week, is like driving 2,000 miles anywhere else. Okay. And now, to me, to go ahead and bring on a guy like Terry Collins, who had 550 some odd wins, 30 games under 500. To me, he's like winning 630 someplace else with the dysfunction and organization that encompasses with the Mets. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the Mets are